All right, Sean, it's all you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today for our workshop on writing assignment design in AI. We're going to get started with some introductions. So I am Shauna Felkins. I'm an instructional consultant with CELT, and my colleague Jill Abney is here with us, the Associate Director for CELT. If you would like, we would like to give everyone the space to introduce themselves by sharing anonymously their feelings that they might be bringing into the space about AI. So this is through Mentimeter. You can either scan the QR code or go to the website menti.com and enter the code below there.
So I see kind of a spectrum of things popping up there. Everything from disappointment and suspicion to excitement and amazement.
Some curiosity, some folks who are a little bit leery.
Confused, that's fair. Every day I feel confused, anew.
Looks like excited and curious are starting to rise to the top a little bit.
I think trepidation is an interesting word because it's a little less negative than concerned or disappointed, but still a healthy skepticism.
So this Mentimeter will stay open for a little while. So if you have any more feelings that come up that you want to share, we can always return to this. One of the reasons why we wanted to start with this today is because with the newness of AI and all of the ever-changing landscape around that and the new tools that are coming out every day, I know that there can be a lot of different feelings, obviously on a very wide spectrum about how we're thinking about AI ourselves, and how we're approaching our teaching.
I'd also add that in previous workshops about AI, we've mentioned that we're all coming from different sort of perspectives and intents on utilizing or trying to help our students learn about AI. So there's space for everybody in that conversation. Just there's space for everyone in this particular session today as well.
So as we move forward throughout the session today, when Jill and I were talking about this, we landed on this kind of framing question of thinking about how dialoguing with AI can help students become responsible, ethical, and critical users. And the way that we looked at this question was through these approaches to the student use of AI. So this comes from a Canvas course that was designed by a learning and teaching center at Auburn University and the SEC to provide some guidelines and some ways to think through AI usage in the classroom. So one of the ways that we can think about these different approaches is through the metaphor of a traffic light. So there are 3 different approaches, and I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we can think of when we see these different lights. So the first one would be our red light. This would be a strategy to mitigate the use of student use of AI in the classroom. So we want to think of this as a short-term solution and as a way to redesign and reframe assignments thus leading us to the conclusion that we're just trying to minimize the likelihood of students using AI tools. So the red light there is really trying to stop, right? Support is more of our yellow light. So this is somewhere in between. It's focuses on student and instructor learning, and it's about incorporating AI tool exploration and reflection into the course and making this technology exploration part of the course design. So this is focused on the skills and exploration that have to do with AI and helping students become better users and more critical users as they interact with these AI tools. And the last one, our green light, is elevate. So this is about looking at how we as instructors can serve as guides in helping our students to figure out their capabilities using AI tools and to push the boundaries a little bit about different types of learning, different methods for completing assignments, etc. So this, for the elevate, that green light, is all about really an incorporation of AI tools into the course and a reimagining really of what the course and assignment structures could look like. All right.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. You go ahead, Jill.
No, I jumped on you. So we want to kind of frame a few things before we kind of zoom into these three different categories, if you will. And we can, organize our thoughts around how to use AI or how to think about AI in assignment design when we're talking about writing in a number of ways. But Shauna and I opted to use these buckets because I feel like the mitigate, support, and enhance really kind of speak to, elevate, speak to where we all might be in various places. But I do want to say a couple of things. We want to approach this thought process of how do we continue to teach writing with trust for our students. So how do we lean on trusting our students as a key component? So when you're feeling yourself wanting to be surveilly or look for ways of kind of catching the use of AI, I think we have to back up or zoom out a little bit and think more about assignment design and what are the ways that what are the things that we're asking students to do? What do we want them to be able to do as a result of the assignment? And that's going to require some maybe rewriting of assignments a little bit. I also would encourage you not to give up on writing. You probably aren't if you're in this workshop, but if somebody stumbles on this recording, like long form writing is still a valuable and useful tool. In an AI conference a couple of weeks ago, I did a presentation that suggested that this is a new tool, but it's the same challenge. We want students to be able to think critically about a number of things, and so writing is helpful in developing that critical thinking. So don't give up on writing. Let's start from a place of trusting our students. And Shauna, have I forgotten any other key framing that we wanted to say?
No, I think that's good.
All right. So let's go to that mitigation slide there. One of the best strategies you can use to approach students in a class where you're asking them not to use AI is transparency, right? If you see an assignment that has value in terms of developing student skills or abilities or thought processes, then saying that out loud, that here's why it's helpful for you to engage in this assignment without the use of AI as a supportive tool, and being transparent about that. And you may feel like, well, I've never had to tell my students before why I make certain teaching decisions. Our students, especially since the pandemic, have been very sort of verbal about their thought processes about instructional choices. And so by just providing a short, clear discussion about why it's useful for them to approach a certain assignment without AI, that can go a long way in mitigating AI use. The other thing I would want to mention there with that transparency is we also have to make sure that we have a course policy that says what our stance on AI is. Or it's not inherently bad to use AI for help with an assignment. It's only sort of an infraction if it's made clear in the course policy that they're being asked not to use it on specific assignments. So being clear, being transparent, that's one way to start out. But as you're designing your assignments and you're rethinking the design of your assignments, consider ways that you can ask students to incorporate local community or classroom environmental pieces into the writing assignment. These are localized contexts and content that are not necessarily available on the web, and so therefore the bots are not necessarily trained on that information. The more localized you make your assignment, the better. Maybe you ask students to incorporate personal experience as they reflect on something, and that means they're piecing together multiple things, whether it be pulling together information from class, pulling together information from readings, and then pulling together their own interpretation and blending all those into one. Another suggestion we have is engaging students together in multiple stages of the writing process. So this has always been a step to avoid plagiarism in general, but it can also help avoid student dependence on AI to draft a paper for them really quick before it's due, is that we stair-step or scaffold students into an assignment where they don't feel overwhelmed or pressured to use those tools to get done, because they haven't had to wait till the last. They've been forced to not wait till the last minute to do it. And then if you are, you're the type of person that's like, yeah, Jill, that's great, trust our students, but also they're still going to use it and I don't want them to. Then there are a few ways you can kind of pop in and see. If you ask students to use Google Docs, for instance, for drafting, you can then use the version history to go in and see, okay, here's when they drafted their outline, here's where they filled that out. If they took it from ChatGPT and just kind of plopped it in there, you'd see this giant blob of text emerge over time. Now, could they like work the system and pretend like they're drafting? Sure, absolutely. But that goes back to what we've been saying since last semester, which is there's no one fail-safe way of determining whether students have used AI for an assignment.
So as we think about that kind of mitigation phase, the next one, right, is support. And as Jill mentioned, if we're working from a place of trust and trusting our students, the support is really where that trust comes in, because we are then engaging with our students in a guided exploration of AI tools. So we want to think about where will they benefit? And I think you can also bring the transparency piece in here as well, as to why we are using AI in specific ways and in specific instances in the class. So whether it's only for certain parts of a writing assignment, only in the brainstorming phase or outlining a way to organize your thoughts, or it's saying, you have more open access, but I want you to show your work in these ways. We want to make sure that we have the guided structure there for students along the way. So there are a couple of things that you could do. You could make guided opportunities for students to write with AI. So this could look like a couple of things. So having in-class activities where students work together to put in different prompts and try to look at the writing outputs that different AI tools, generative AI tools, give us back. You also want to make sure that you're helping students become AI literate and practice crafting prompts, evaluating outputs, and citing AI, very importantly. Several of the major style guides have already given their guidelines, and those are available online. APA is the one that I shared with my students in my AI policy. So you want to give them all of the different things that you would in any other way of approaching writing, right? Making sure that they have all of the different components of this is how it could be used for each of those steps in the writing process. And then you also might want to explore the ways that AI can support those parts of the writing process. So I've already mentioned brainstorming and organization, but one of the things that you can also use AI for is looking at tone and audience. So asking students to examine AI outputs to see if the tone matches academic writing or a specific creative genre, right? And helping them look at the ways where their knowledge and the skills that they're learning in the class related to writing are supplementing the tool, the AI, right? It's about their human piece in this interaction, and not just the AI creates the end all be all correct answer.
The last sort of bucket we will throw these assignment design ideas and frameworks into is the Elevate bucket that Shauna has outlined a little bit. But you can think of Elevate as taking that support piece and sort of escalating that even further to where it goes beyond students just discovering, or you discovering with the students what AI can do or how it can assist with the writing process in meaningful ways, and actually begins focusing on helping students think in new realms or in new possibilities. So I think that if we want to think about elevation, if that's where you are and what you're wanting to do with student writing in your classes, there's a couple of ways to explore this. Curiosity will kind of guide this way of thinking in assignment design, looking for ways that students can enhance or build something new through AI-assisted activities. You can also think of this as a space where students get to be more creative in problem solving in terms of exploring these AI tools. Sid Dobrin from the University of Florida said in a conference recently that it's not AI that will be taking student jobs. It's students who know how to use AI will be taking students' jobs. And so if students are enabled to explore these different types of tools and what they're capable of, this can be a space for them to build these skills and build a portfolio in which they're able to develop this. Another suggestion we offer is that you can use AI to elevate your own design and delivery of your course. So let's say, I'm a historian, and I am trying to get my students to comprehend the concept of communism in a particular social and historical context. You can move beyond, here's the definition. You can even move beyond students write an essay about and define, and actually go all the way towards have ChatGPT or Bard like design a game, an HTML coded game where they make decisions that help them sort of understand the components and practices of Soviet Russian communism as compared to some other version or something like that. So you've sort of taken the plan and elevated it to a new level, something that would have taken a lot longer before.
So we have here a few specific examples. So as we were going over the different buckets, Jill and I both gave some examples of assignments, but here are a few more that align with the colors with the different buckets that we mentioned. So for elevation, thinking about how AI might be integrated into the discipline and future professional goals. So using AI for students to explore the different skills that they could be building, and thinking about how they push the bounds of the things that they're learning, right? How can they move the discipline forward, which is very exciting to me. And then you go ahead, Jill.
I was just going to jump in for the supporting piece. If you offer students the task of, okay, well, let's start with what you created, and then let's see if we can't critically build something further from your initial offering in terms of writing. Then you have spaces where students can improve their burstiness in their writing, like whether that's diction or syntax or tone. You can have spaces where students who maybe were hindered by clarity or organization being able to sort of level up a little bit. And if the ideas are sound, if the students are spending quality time thinking through things, then we get to ask ourselves this philosophical question of, is it okay then that they're then aided by this tool to make the communication of those ideas a little bit more clear, right? And then I can go ahead and jump towards the mitigate one as well. You may think that the best way to mitigate the use of AI among students for their assignments is to ignore it or to not mention it. But actually, I think one of the most compelling things to do is to show them the ways in which what they can create is actually superior in some ways to what an AI tool can create. So if you insert a prompt from your assignments and have AI generate an essay, and then you, in small groups in your class, take that essay and then critique it. Talk about, well, where is it missing some key components? You're asking students to do this sort of meta activity where they are critiquing writing. It's not someone, sitting next to them, so they don't feel that pressure of peer review to like, oh, this is great, everything's fine. They can get after it a little bit and say, oh, wow, just because a computer wrote it doesn't mean this is perfect. And that, I think, will be an important step in getting students to think about how their writing differs from that of a large language model. So we want to give you all an opportunity. I'm sure that you all have lots of ideas about how we can use this tool for writing, or how we can mitigate the use of AI in writing. And we want to invite you to join a Google Doc where you can share these ideas. So if you want to type on your computer, the best way to do this would be to insert that bit.ly link in a browser window. It's bit.ly/writing AI fall 23. And I'll put that in the chat as well, so you can click on it. And so we invite you to jump on that document and to share an example of either a space where you think you can design an assignment to mitigate AI use, a way to support AI use for learning, or to elevate their skills in learning through the use of AI. So feel free to keep adding things there, but I'd love to have a discussion a little bit about some things we see. We'll start with the mitigate option, the mitigate goal, when the goal is to have students think through an assignment without the use of AI, or using AI to realize why they shouldn't use AI for a particular task. So I find this this idea of doing a specific statistical test and then have the students evaluate whether the response is appropriate. Yeah, the idea behind that is quite connected to what I mentioned about comparing what they do well versus what the tool can do well, which is sometimes it gets things wrong. And so our ability to check and to go back and test and see and recreate, even if it takes us much longer time, is an important skill for students to practice. I like this also this fall apart. I like students to watch AI fall apart, trying to come up with memories that it doesn't have. Absolutely. AI, generative text-based AI operates as a large language model, which has been trained on lots of training data, and it spits out the most likely word to come next. It's a predictive model. And so there are things that it does not do well as a result. Asking ChatGPT to summarize. Okay. So let's move on to support. Having students use ChatGPT for research and designing research questions or search terms, I think is a really unique way to support their writing. Sometimes that can be challenging. I know my own students often struggle with like, well, my topic, nobody's written on my topic. Right. Well, in those specific terms with that word, absolutely not. But there are lots of adjacent topics. How do we find those? ChatGPT and other tools can help with that. It can also help a little bit with designing or finding research articles, but it's also, that's going to be twofold. It can maybe turn them on to a particular article or book. It also might make something up. And so then they get to see both. They get to be introduced to a reading list of things they should check out while also recognizing that, oh, maybe sometimes there are hallucinations and I got to be careful if I were going to use this in that way. Shauna, feel free to point out anything jumping out at you too.
I like the incorporating it into the reflection process. So there's a possibility there, right, to use Gen AI like ChatGPT to have it evaluate what the student has completed, and then give questions asking for clarification or things that they should think about next time. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I also like the idea of using ChatGPT or other similar tools for conversational partners. I think many students are maybe a little bit shy or socially disconnected in some ways, and so they feel sometimes safer typing things into a computer than they do going out on a limb and offering out ideas to someone when they don't feel like an expert. And so that one there about playing with the tool as a study partner for essay writing and thinking through complex ideas is something that I'm toying with quite a bit. Let's move on to the Elevate section now and thinking about how we can take it to the next level a little bit. Anything stand out to you all? We're doing a lot of talking, so you're welcome to identify things that stand out to you while we sort through them as well. Some prompt writing, definitely a skill that students are having to explore. Analyzing style, rewriting.
The one asking ChatGPT to pose as a historical figure, I think, is really where these Gen AI models have the potential to shine, right? Because they are fed biographies and things that are written by speeches by historical figures. And there are a couple of specific ed tech platforms that are pitching that as having the ability for students to interact in chats one-on-one in a historical or it'd be interesting to see a literary context as well.
I think I'd probably put anything that's just sort of purely editing. I'd probably consider that more supporting than elevating. But that's just my take. It's open for interpretation. There's no hard and fast rules here. So I actually want to talk about this a little bit. Could you scroll down just a bit, Shauna? I would advise against, in this current moment, having ChatGPT grade or evaluate student responses, primarily because it is not it's not private. It's in the internet. It's not a pay. Like, even if you're paying for GPT Plus, you're still giving student data, even if they're not even if their names are not on it. You don't want to put student assignments into chatbots. So I would avoid that at this time. I would also, if you wanted to invite your students to see what ChatGPT says about their assignments, that could be an option. So
the one way that you could potentially do something like that, not putting student responses in, is asking instead for ChatGPT to produce a output that was written like a specific level of student from a specific discipline, as a way to either have examples to show students if it's for an assignment you've never given before, or as a way for you to think through what the prompt, how ChatGPT would interpret the prompt that you've given, and maybe then how students would. Or is it getting at what you hoped that students would, how they would answer those questions?
Yeah, or even inviting students to evaluate what the ChatGPT or other tool created and say, okay, now grade this. Like, what's it missing? They're seeing an example that's not another student's, and giving them the opportunity to assess. I like the one on the bottom here too that says create visualizations of descriptions that students write, so students can kind of see their words made into something visible. The flip side of that could be, we're talking about writing, but you could use the visual generative AIs to create an image. Like, I have writer's block, and I'm supposed to write a short story on such and so, and can you create an image that might inspire me to write a story about something such and so, or maybe you're asking. I mean, it doesn't have to be creative writing. It could be an interpretive essay assignment where I have to discuss, a famous court case, and I'm not sure where to start. Can you give me an image that helps me kind of kick off my thinking process of writing something? So students who like to think in different ways, or writing is just not their primary mode of communication, maybe using something like that for inspiration. All right. So let's shift back to the slide deck. One of Ethan Mollick's quotes, he's a management professor at the Wharton School at Penn, and his blog, or it's called Substack now. One useful thing, he writes extensively about AI and the use of AI in education. And one quote of his that I find particularly compelling is, using AI can help students consider what is uniquely human about the work they do, which calls back to some of the suggestions we made about having students explore the outputs. We haven't talked much about dialoguing with AI tools, but I think that's also a key component, is pushing back. There is no one shot prompt that gives you like the most amazing thing ever, and there's no flaws. But rather, in the pushing back, students can develop a little bit of agency and a little bit of a feeling of confidence that, hey, I have knowledge that's not being expressed here. And so giving them these opportunities in their writing specifically, I think is well worth the time. The other thing that allows us to do is to encourage students to be critical thinkers. And that's critical thinking is one of those terms that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but students struggle with their feelings of confidence as a novices in a discipline or novices in a skill, whether it be writing or whatever. And so finding a way to empower them to see where they know stuff and see where they can push back is nice. And AI can accommodate that a little bit. Some easy starting points that I would recommend if you're trying to get students to push back on some of the outputs that AI is putting forward. Number one is, where does it sound different than what you know about the topic? Like, even if you're a little bit unsure, like, just say it back to the bot and say, I don't know that that's correct, and here's what I think. And see what it says. It might say, oh yeah, you're totally right, I made a mistake. That's actually pretty common. Or it might try to push back with you. Like, I had a fight with Bing the other day about where an apostrophe goes, and I'm right, and it still thinks it's right. And so, I obviously need a few more hobbies, but that's the moment when you tell students it's okay to disengage with a bot. If it's doing something you don't want it to do, disengage, but push back. The prompt that I used to have students practice their essay writing, sometimes when it hears that prompt, it promptly gives them the essay question and then writes it for them. And so it's forcing students to cheat, essentially. When I ask it just to give me a question and then give me feedback on my answer, I just hit stop. Don't do it. I told you not to answer the question. And most of the time it'll say, oh, I'm sorry. And then it'll figure it out, or it'll do it again. And I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to go to Bing for this one or ChatGPT for this one. Another place where we can encourage critical thinking for our students is in pushing them to look for the spaces where there's lack of nuance, or look for the spaces where it relies too much on absolutes. These are the spaces where there's probably something wrong or inaccurate or hallucination. And then lastly, the easy way to catch inaccuracies in some of these is looking at the citations. You can throw a title, author, date into Google, and when you do a Google search and one of the terms just never shows up in comparison with the rest, and there's a line through it, automatically okay, let me look at that deeper. In fact, there's a hallucinated detail of that citation, and that helps students figure that out. Okay. So we got one more, Shauna, or is it just the resources from them?
Just resources.
Okay, so let's close the slide deck, and let's just open it up for questions and comments. What challenges are you facing? What strategies are you using? What questions do you have for us and what we shared today? And I'm gonna stop